get some positivity from time to time from the likes of Brian Billick or John Harbaugh or some of our cool guests here. And I've gone a little away from sports here and again. You guys know about my music series last month with the legendary rock and roll interviews. And if you've been listening for any period of time, you know of my affinity for positivity and living a positive life and following some good role models. And Tony Robbins was a guy that I did a fire walk with in 1994. He's been on my program in the past. And in this spring, a movie popped up, a documentary that I've taken great interest in. I have not seen it on Netflix yet, but this is even more of a thrill because I told Ray Bachman to book this guy on the program 2 weeks ago, and damn if he isn't on the phone right now. The Netflix documentary is available right now. It is called Tony Robbins, I Am Not Your Guru. It is a Joe Berlinger film, and Joe Berlinger, nonfiction film, TV producer, and director, joins us live via satellite from someplace near New York. Joe, first off, man, welcome in. Really appreciate you taking time to talk to a sports talk schmuck in Baltimore about something pretty cool.
Hey, man, no problem. Baltimore is one of my favorite places, believe it or not. I've done quite a bit of film work in Baltimore. Shot an episode of Homicide in the day, Tom Fontana's series. I actually shot Blair Witch 2 in Baltimore, although we'd like to forget about that one.
Was Belzer in your episode of Homicide?
He was.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, if it had Belzer in it, it can't stink, man. That's my man there.
No, Homicide was awesome. It was Blair Witch 2 that was bad.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. I mean, I see movies that nobody saw. Is that the truth or no?
Everybody
saw the first one.
The first, a lot of people saw the second one, but the second one had its problems. The studio and I had very different visions of what the film should be, and at the 12th hour, they recut my film, and it bore a little resemblance to what I was trying to do. But
kind of like being a musician in the 70s, probably, right?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Good analogy.
All right, so look, man, I've watched a lot of stuff with you and Tony talking about. I've had Tony on the show. I've done 5 firewalks. My son's done a firewalk. My wife did a firewalk, survived leukemia, all of that. But you're the ultimate guy to do this because you're a real movie. You kind of befriended Tony, but sort of in some sort of not really believing what the message was, or maybe not even understanding the message at that point.
Yeah, I mean, look, I met Tony at a party, and he was, strangely enough, or not so strangely enough, a huge fan of the Metallica movie, Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, which you can understand why he would be attracted to that film, because at the end of the day, it's about relationships and therapy and breaking through and getting to the next level and all the kind of stuff that Tony's about. So we ended up having a fascinating conversation about that movie. And, I had a very superficial impression of who he was. This was back in 2012. Had no real sense of who he was other than the most superficial public persona kind of pop cultural, perception.
Well, he's made fun of himself. I mean, he's played himself in movies. And
like Shallow Hal. That was about all. The Shallow Hal cameo was the most I knew about the guy. But so we just connected at a party and had a great conversation. And I think he sensed that I had some issues going on in my life at the time, which I did. I mean, I didn't overtly talk about it with him, but he later told me he sensed there was some stuff going on, and he invited me to go to this thing called Date with Destiny, which sounded really cheesy, but I'm a tough New Yorker who's cynical, skeptical, who has made some films about some tough subjects like the West Memphis 3 case, prosecutorial misconduct.
You're a journalist, right? I mean, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you are. You're like me. You ask questions and sometimes make people uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, exactly. But he invited me to this thing in 2012, and I went to it and had this incredibly life-changing experience. And when it was over, I thanked him profusely and said, "Hey, I want to make a movie about this." And he was reluctant for 2 years. I chased the guy for 2 years to do it. But ultimately, he agreed to make the film, and which just came out 2 weeks ago on Netflix, and it's just blowing up on Netflix. It's one of their most successful launches, and literally, I mean, the thing about Netflix is, for a documentary maker, it's pretty awesome because you got 190 countries now, 81 million subscribers. So I'm literally getting emails and from all around the world from people who are just blown away by the film and feel it's very positive and transformative. And look, for me, most of my films in the past, I'm pointing out what's wrong with the world and in the hopes of correcting it, of course. But, I guess you could say I make feel-bad movies. But this is a feel-good movie. It's a movie intended to make you think about your life and how we can all be more connected to one another. And it's really kind of blowing people away. If you like, go to the hashtag I Am Not Your Guru, which is the name of the movie, Tony Robbins' I Am Not Your Guru. If you go to that hashtag on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, I mean, the comments, I've never received such glowing comments. It's interesting, the critics have dismissed the film by and large. It's mixed reviews, but the negative reviews are not only just bad, but just mean and nasty and trying to rip me apart, rip Tony apart, and more importantly to me, rip the people apart who go to this, dismiss the people who go to these events and get something out of it. It's like,
Oh, I got something out of it. I've had a lifetime of things out of it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So these critics who don't know, who don't make films, and who don't go to these events and have a negative outlook on life, wanting to rip people apart. It's the disconnect between the popular reaction that the film is having. I mean, truly my most successful film ever by tenfold. I mean, 1 million people have seen it in the first 2 weeks on Netflix. And what the critics are saying is pretty mind-boggling. It suggests to me that maybe some critics are either very unhappy, angry people, or they're a little out of touch with what people want to see.
Well, and I'll say this. Joe Berlinger here on the Tony Robbins flick, I'm Not Your Guru. So 1994, I was up late one night after I had a couple of beers with Mike Messina after an Orioles game, quite frankly. Saw the late night, TV ad, right? Bought the tapes, started listening, kind of caught on, and then somehow there was a radio commercial that said Tony Robbins is doing a fire walk in D.C. next Saturday night. Well, I swiped the credit card for whatever and went down to D.C. and moved in. But the night I got there, it was a 3-day seminar. They handed you a sheet of paper and you had to sign a release saying that you were really going to walk on fire. And I'm like, no. Hold on here. We're going to walk on fire? What do you mean? Is that a metaphor? It sounded like a metaphor to me. It didn't sound like something you could do. And 6 hours later, I'm walking across hot coals, which I've now done 5 times in my life and subjected my wife and my son to a few times along the way. For you to go to Date with Destiny, I always see that as sort of the master's or the graduate program, right? I know he also has a life mastery course that he's had for 25 years. But you kind of went in at the master's level instead of at the Unleash the Power Within. Did you read any of his book? I mean, literally the first day you showed up there, you're probably a little overwhelmed, especially if you were sort of coerced or forced or in some way felt obligated to be there because Tony invited you personally, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, it was actually quite a trippy experience. I went to the year I went. It was in Palm Springs, California. I'm a super busy guy. Like, for me to take a 6-day vacation is unusual, let alone to take 6 days out of my life to go to a seminar. And back in 2012, I would have told you I'm not a seminar guy. I'm not a self-help guy, that none of this was for me. But somehow I found myself pulled towards trying it based on this conversation I had with Tony at this party. So when I arrived, I also assumed it was nice that he invited me, but he wouldn't remember that he even invited me. So when I arrived, I realized I was one of quite a few people he had invited. He and now that I've gotten to know the guy and I've spent quite a bit of time with him, routinely, he invites people that he encounters in his life to attend, which is great. The thing costs $5,000, so an invitation to go for free is kind of a nice.
Well, quite frankly, I haven't been able to find those 5 days either to go to Palm Springs or to go to Fiji, or he's done them in Australia. But I get the value.
Yeah. So, but when I walked in, there was somebody with a clipboard with my name and the names of all the other invited guests, and this person's job was to make sure the invited guests were having a good time and participating. So all of a sudden I realized I'm not anonymous. So this thing starts, and the first couple hours is quite intense, loud music. You pair off with a stranger to reveal your innermost feelings.
There's a lot of dancing involved as well.
Dancing.
Yes.
I mean, every one of my red flags was going off, thinking, "Oh my God, this is not for me." So I fled after the first break. Like 2 hours into it, there was a break. And I fled for the exit doors, and I called my wife, and I said, "Oh, my God, what is my exit strategy here? I can't bear 6 more minutes of this, let alone 6 more days.
There's a lot of happy people in there.
yeah, it's a little intense and overwhelming, and it's like sensory overload precisely because I hadn't done any of his other things. This was my first encounter with this. And
yeah, you got dropped into the deep end, dude. You know what I mean? Right.
I did. And so I called my wife and I said, listen, I don't want to insult the guy. It's really nice he invited me, but how do I kind of bow out of this thing without upsetting him? And my wife wisely counseled me to give it another 24 hours since I had carved out all of this time to be here, and I had flown out to California, et cetera, et cetera. So I gave it another day, and on day 2 there was this incredibly, for me, meaningful and profoundly moving experience where he challenges you to go, to recall your earliest childhood memory, and then he challenges you through this guided exercise with your eyes closed in a room of 2,500 people to find the memory prior to what you think is your earliest memory. And by recovering that memory, it casts a whole new light on the thing you think is your earliest memory. And for many people, in remembering that previous memory, I'm greatly condensing the philosophy here for the sake of radio. But,
sure.
But by recovering that memory, it often frees you from the thing that's blocking you, that's holding you back. And a lot of my issues stem from my childhood, like most people. And I opened my eyes. I was flooded in tears. Back in 2012, I would have told you I'm not a crier either. And yet here I am in a room of 2,500 people, crying like a baby. And a weight lifted. I just felt like better. It wasn't like the heavens parted and my life was magically redeemed and perfect. But I just felt lighter in the moment. So I thought, you know what? There's a lot. Instead of being judgmental about this thing and resisting it, let me just give it a whirl, because if anything can make me feel this way even for a moment, I want to give it a shot. And by the end of the 6 days, I felt like I was given some tools to reassess my life and to deal with issues. Look, we all have issues in our lives, and sometimes they can take hold of you, and that was the great gift that Tony gave me. And so that's when I decided, hey, I want to make a film about it, because, documentary in the last decade or so has just become synonymous with investigative takedown pieces.
Well, that's all we have left, because we have no news organizations anymore, right? I mean, literally.
It's and I don't want to knock that, because documentarians are doing some of the important social ills reporting of the day. So I don't want to knock it, and I've made many of those films. But for me, I was growing weary of that kind of paradigm, and I just wanted to use documentary in a different way to inspire people and to try to bring the positivity that's in that room and the lessons of Tony to a documentary film. And that's what I did, and I think a lot of people are getting something out of it.
So for me,
and I think it's precisely because it's not some negative takedown piece that exposes that he's a fraud or something like that, that the critics are giving me, grief about it, because, documentaries are supposed to show you what's wrong with the world, and this is me using the medium of documentary to try to inspire people.
Well, the thing that I am so excited about seeing the film, and I'm going to watch it with my wife, quite frankly. She was away last week. I thought it better to watch it with her than without her. And I'm still trying to figure out Netflix, too, by the way, because I'm sort of old school like that, But when I did the Robbins UPWs, Unleash the Power Within, they're 4-day-long, literally marathons. I know you know what I'm talking about, but Robbins is on stage 14, 16 hours a day, and he will leave you at 2:30 in the morning and say, go sleep a few hours, be back here at 7:30. No, maybe make it 7 o'clock in the morning. There's barely enough time to sleep, eat, get back in the room, because he's all in. He plays very hard. You work very hard. But if you're there for 72 hours, you're kind of on the floor for 48 hours of that. I don't know how you turn it into a 2-hour. For me, I'm looking at it as a sneak preview that would make me want to go to Date with Destiny. But the bad news, dude, now everybody's going to know what Date with Destiny is, right? And everybody's going to want. There's going to be a demand for this seminar, in its fullest terms, not in a 2-hour sort of microwave version of it. And I know the film's going to be wonderful. I've read all the reviews, but I really do think the big challenge is, how do you take hundreds of hours of something that moves you and get it down to 2?
Yeah, I mean, that was the challenge, and anyone who's been with Date with Destiny has reached out to me and said, oh, my God, I don't know how you did it, but you really captured what it's like to be there. Look, my goal is not to have people run out and sign up for Tony Robbins seminars. Some of the critics have said, oh, this is just a promotional video. I mean, and nothing could be further from the truth. My goal was to, treat it like a concert, like it's a concert film, but a concert of human emotion, and to drop you into that world and let you experience what it's like to be in that room, and it's kind of like, yeah, I mean that's basically it. To give people the experience of what it's like, but not to be the seminar itself, but just to allow viewers to spend the 2-hour running time of the movie to do something we don't do enough, which is to think about the direction and the quality of our own lives and how to be more connected with one another. So I actually don't care if people sign up for the seminars. I think if they do, people will get something out of it. But really, my goal was to just take the best of Tony's teachings and to give you that kind of concert experience. Just like if you go to a concert movie, it's not like you have to listen to every album that the band ever made to fully appreciate the experience. And in the same way, this is kind of a concert film, And to some of the critics who have said, well, why didn't you show this or show that or talk to experts to see if this is valuable, which is some of the criticism I've heard, that wasn't the intent of the film. Just like in a concert film, the camera doesn't glide by the drummer and say, well, that the drummer actually does a better job in the studio album than or the camera doesn't glide by the lead singer and say, hey, he's having an affair with the drummer's wife. It's like it's an experiential film where I'm giving you the experience of what it's like to attend one of these events, and to hopefully have it be a self-contained thing where you get something out of it.
Dude, I'm really, really pleased you took a little time to come on. I'm going to say the last thing. I mean, even in this interview, I've already told you I'm the converted, right? And your tenor with any journalist is that there's going to be negativity out there and there's going to be takedowns and all of that stuff. I think the interesting thing is the name of the flick, right? I'm Not Your Guru is something Robbins would shout at me in a room if I would say, please, Tony, help me, fix me, please fix me. That's what Ernest Angley did on Sunday mornings, right? That's not really the way it goes, but that's part of the self-help thing. It's called self-help for a reason. You help yourself.
Exactly. He gives you the tools, but there's no magic bullet here to if you have issues, if you don't work on yourself. Just like the seminar for me was very transformative, but, have I fallen since leaving the seminar? Have I gone back into the funk that made me want to go attend it? Of course, but instead of wallowing in it for weeks and months, he's given me the tools to snap myself back out of it, but you have to work on yourself. It's a daily practice.
Or as he would say, change your state.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Hey, Joe, it's great having you on. I really appreciate it. Dude, you're inspiring me, and I'm going to watch this flick, and then at some point I'm going to wind up at Date with Destiny because it's my destiny to do it, and it might be your foot up my rectum that makes me go do it right now,
Cool. Well, check it out on Netflix, and if you like it, the hashtag I am not your guru on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, just, talk about what you thought about the film. That would be cool. I mean, it's amazing to see the comments literally all around the world about people who are sharing the experience of watching the film. It's been pretty awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, I own the radio station here and have for 18 years, and I do the show, and people say, hey, who do you have on your show? And I people that I want to talk to, people I'm interested in who are willing to talk to me, and you're one of those guys, and I appreciate it. And I will be moved by the flick, and I'll throw some tweets out your way, and I'll get you a little more positive feedback on it, Joe.
Fantastic, man.
Keep the faith. Make me a rock and roll movie, man. Go make a Rush documentary or something, for crying out loud.
Well, there could be a new rock and roll film in my future. I'm talking to a major band right now about that subject, but more on that later.
Ooh, no hints there? No song titles dropped in? Nothing like that? No. You can't just drop the mic on me like that, Joe. I'm a music guy.
Well, anybody interested in metal beyond Metallica would be pretty amazed that this film is finally being made. That's all I'll tell you.
All right. I've been accused of being in heavy metal parking lot, although I'm not. But it was filmed at the Capitol Center. So, hey, great having you on, Joe. All Be well, man.
Talk to you soon.
You got it. Joe Berlinger, he is the documentarian and makes movies about all sorts of things. His latest movie is a very successful Netflix documentary called I'm Not Your Guru. It is an inside look at a concert film at a Tony Robbins seminar, and I've been kind of unabashed over my 2+ decades of doing sports radio here about my weekend with Tony Robbins in early 1994. Maybe that's another segment altogether. Maybe I'll have Tony on one day to talk about that. But it's great to get Joe on. Appreciate Ray Bachman, our executive producer, for doing yeoman's work and tracking down non-sports related guests for a little, we slide that into the first place Orioles, slide that in to training camp with the Ravens, and it was great for Joe to stop by. The hashtag is I'm Not Your Guru. I'm Not Your Guru is the name of the flick. Tony Robbins and film producer Joe Berlinger there. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net. Give me some feedback if you hate my positivity or whatever. You can email me that too. I mean, I get hate mail and love mail both at the same time. It's all equal and all good with me. Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Joe, thanks.